Okay, let's get started. So we are BCRI, Bangalore Clinical Research Institute, and welcome you all for this demo session. I'll take you through the clinical research aspects of clinic for this session, along with the clinical data management basics. Let's get started. So everyone, those who are quite enthusiastic, those who have been participated in this training might be aware about what the clinical research. That's I'm assuming that you might have searched at least the keywords for this clinical data management or clinical research that you are looking for as an opportunity to grow your knowledge, to grow your career into this session, this domain. So I assume that you might have searched for keywords or you might have already known for some of the terms. However, with today's demo, you will get the depth of the details that you might be missing onto the data that you might have collected on Google or Wikipedia. So I will take you to the next slide and we'll get started for the clinical research. So it's a typical, what is the definition of clinical research? Is a branch of healthcare sciences that determines the safety and efficacy of medications, devices, and diagnostic products intended for the human use. So that's the typical definition that you can get it anywhere. But how do you interpret this? So what do you mean by safety? Safety is something that you are determining whether if you are taking any drug, whether that is safe to use, or do that having any adverse events or adverse reactions, will that cause any troubles to you? So for example, every time when you go to any physician or any doctor and you get a medication, you always ask for, is there any side effect for this drug? So that determines the safety, that whether any drug that you are taking, whether it is available in market, like any physician is prescribing, or if it is not prescribing, if it is, whether it is still in research, those terms as a safety where you determine if the study drug is safe to consume or not. Effectiveness, it's another term for efficacy. Efficacy is something like you will get to know whether the drug is acting on that. For example, if you're taking a paracetamol medication, and when you say whether it is safe to use, it means that it is not causing you any harm. When you say that it is effective, like an efficacy of drug, it means if your temperature, if your body temperature is elevated, paracetamol is reducing it. So that determines is efficacy. Efficacy is the effectiveness, that it is reducing your temperature. So safety and efficacy of medications, devices, and diagnostic products. So that defines your clinical research. It's a backbone for every pharmaceutical industry, because none of the drug without clinical trial can enter the market. So only research is not enough, that you have identified any new drug for any disease. That doesn't mean that you have succeeded into taking that drug into market. You need to conduct a clinical trials first, and only then the study drug can be prescribed to the patients. So that is why the clinical research is backbone for pharma industry, because during the clinical research, the pharma industries does not earn anything. They are investing their money to research, to identify new drugs, to identify their safety and efficacy. And then once the drug is safe to use for human consumption, then only drug will be marketed, and that time only the pharma companies can earn money from the drugs. Clinical research helps to find a new or better ways for to detect, diagnose, treat, or prevent diseases. So that's the outcome of our clinical research. That what else we can do apart from the human trials? That if some a drug is already in market, and if you say that earlier drug was given as an oral indications, and you find out that the orally only 40% of drug is reaching to the target organ for its action, and 60% is going into waste. So and you add, and the new trial has been conducted to identify if the any other route of medication is more effective than the oral. So you identified that during your clinical trials, you conducted a trial, and the intravenous use of that particular medication is making the drug reach 80% to the target organ. So in that case, this is the uh, for existing drugs, that you are changing the route of administration. So that also helps with the clinical trials, that this research will ongoing, and you always find out the new or better ways of your treating or diagnosing the diseases. So now that's the clinical research. What is the clinical trials? So everyone with this current days, that everyone might know that the vaccine trials has been done. So those vaccine trials, everyone was waiting, everyone was updating the news that trials are ongoing, when it will come in market, when it will come in market. So why those news were waiting for, when you already know that there is a drug for it, but why you were waiting for 8 9 months to get that medications or that vaccine for yourself during this corona time? Because the trials were ongoing. Without trials, even in emergencies, drugs cannot come into market, because you need to first identify whether drug is safe and effective for human use or not. So clinical research, clinical trials are for, it defines as it's a type of clinical research study. Clinical trial is an experiment designed to answer specific questions about possible new treatments or new ways of using existing or known treatments. As I said in my previous slide, that the route of administration we have changed for the known drug. But if it's a new drug, so earlier you don't know that vaccines how we will going to get. So if earlier the polio vaccine was given is an intramuscular, now it's a oral polio vaccine. Even now for the corona vaccines, you might know that some are nasal sprays, some are intravenous, subcutaneous also there. So it's based on to clinical trial, how the study has been conducted. We identified how the result or how the effectivity changes based on to the route. Clinical trials are done to determine whether new drugs or treatments are safe or effective. Clinical trial is the mainstay of bringing out new drug to the market. Why? Because without trials, you cannot say that whether drug is safe or not, drug is effective or not. Clinical trials are done in different parts, like a preclinical trials and clinical phase. So preclinical is something where you usually use animal trials, that we usually term as animal trials. First drug was tested into some experimental animals like mice, monkeys, albino mouses, or those who are close proximate to our human rights. Whether we first test those into preclinical, we call it as a animal trials as well. And sometimes you also use a in vitro, in vivo experimentation using a bioinformatics tools, the protein bondings. All those will be determined into your preclinical conditions. But even if you are doing a preclinical, there is a mandatory clinical phase of 1 2 3 4, where humans are actually involved into experimentation part. So let's see what this clinical phase of phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3, how does that defines in more details. Phase 4 is termed as a post-marketing surveillance, where the drugs are actually monitored on the actual human being. So if you are going over the counter and you are taking any medication, that is a phase 4. So phase 4 is a post-marketing surveillance. So let's go one by one for the clinical phases and how the phases looks like. What do you mean by phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3? How the FDA, what does the FDA stands for, and what is phase 4 studies? So phase 1 is like, whenever you are doing any new thing, you always try it on a trial and error basis. So you just keep a small sample or small population to determine whether it is actually good to use. So phase 1 is used on healthy volunteers, all the healthy individuals, to determine whether the drug is safe for human or not. And we test the safety and dosage and also the side effects. So it will be monitored continuously. There will be short span studies with the minimal participants, like a 20 30 people will be participated, and they will be monitored 24/7 when the study drug is given. So once you see that the phase 1 is fine, like the safety is there, the dosage is fine, the side effects are quite minimal, I would say that it will not be there. There will be always something which you need to identify, and there'll be always a negative side for it, that we called it as a adverse event. But always make sure that your study drug is having a more safety parameters rather than the adverse events. So if your study drug passes the phase 1, then it will be entered to phase 2, where you will increase your sample size. Like earlier you have taken a 10 or 20 subjects, now you in phase 2 you might take a 80 or 120 subjects, to just determine the same kind of safety of the study, whether now you are increasing the number of patients with a larger group of effective. And here first time we will take the, if affected individuals, like if we are doing a clinical trial on an onco study, this is the first phase where actual patients will be treated with the study drug. So earlier it was a healthy individual, now we have entered into phase 2, where we include the affected individuals, and it also tests the efficacy and side effects of the drug, but that's on the actual patients. So in preclinical, we have already determined whether the study drug is already acting on particular disease or particular therapeutic area or not. If the phase 2 is fine and the results of phase 2 are promising, then only we'll go to phase 3, where we use a wide range of population. Like earlier we have used 80 to 100 subjects, now we'll go for thousands and thousands of subjects. So there is no limit that how many subjects you are enrolling into phase 3, but based on to your protocol, your study designing, it will be determined that how many subjects you are using. So usually it will varies from 500 to 1000. Even I have come across the studies where 30 or 40,000 patients has been treated in the phase 3 studies. So what you determine into phase 3? So phase 3 is conducted all across the world, different geographical locations, different kind of population, different races, so that we will understand how the study drug is reacting to different people. So we determine the long-term effectiveness and the comparison with other medications. So if there is any, see, onco studies, everyone might know that there is a chemotherapy which is already present. But in chemotherapy, what molecule that has been used and the molecule that you are working. So we will compare those study drug along with the study results, how the existing molecule is working or how the existing treatment is working, and how the newly defined or newly researched medication is working. If the and if and definitely after comparison, if the new drug is compromising, if it's showing more results over the previous as on a compromised drug, so we'll go ahead with the phase 3. So let's consider ourselves as in a pharma company, that where we are funding our results, funding our trial, because conducting these trials will take a huge amount of money. And you understand that at the end of phase 3 you're comparing with the existing treatment, and you understand that the effectiveness of this new drug is lesser than the which is already available in market. So usually a doctor will not prescribe this medication, then why to go ahead for the phase next phases, when so you can just truncate your study over there and there if the effectiveness or the comparison is not correct. So if the effectiveness is more good than the existing treatment, or then that's for only for the existing medication. If it's a new drug and with the medication is not all available in the market, so you'll just show them the results to FDA. FDA is a Food and Drug Authority of USA, which provides the approval for all clinical trials for the regions. So this treatment determine effective and safe for public use. So you need to file an NDA, new drug approval form, to FDA. They will review your all results, and once the results are fine, if their conduct is ethical and results are compromising, results are approved, results are good to go ahead for the use into market, then phase 4 will be started. So phase 4 continues to test for the effectiveness and testing, and can be taken off market if necessary, if you see that the in your because phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 are controlled groups, but phase 4 you don't have any control. Anyone can go into pharmacy shop and get the medication, over the counter medications. And even if been prescribed by the doctor earlier, if that particular is if that particular subject is having any pre-existing conditions, and that is reacting something different to that particular population, so drug can be withdrawn after phase 4 as well from the market. You might have heard of many medications in recent time. It's in use that medication has been withdrawn from this market, when the medication is withdrawn from this country. So it affects the really the geographical location also it matters for the safety and efficacy of the study drug. That's why we include such variant population into phase 3 studies. Okay, so that was about the phase 1, 2, 3, 4 for the clinical phases. So how the drug discovery process works? So it's always the lab researcher who works on to discovery of drug. So like as I said that right earlier, we directly used to do it on animals, directly on a mice or some pigs, monkeys, any lab experimental animals. There is a vast variety of animals that you can use into trials. Even a Drosophila is very close proximity to our human race. So based on to your study, based on to your protocol, based on to your designing that what animals that you are going to use, that happens into discovery phase. The next come is a preclinical studies, where you actually testing on mice after your discovery. That see, you might have heard that someone is working on this particular molecule, or someone is doing that postdoctorate or research on particular thing, and those like that comes under the discovery. And there will be thousands and thousands of studies which thousands of study researchers who works on to one single parameter. So it's not necessary that everything comes into market. So from thousands and thousands, few will reach to preclinical phases where you actually test those onto animals, the experimental animals. Once preclinicals are fine, the safety is fine, the effectivity is fine, then it will enter to the clinical phase where it will be tested on uh, humans, and after it is chemistry, manufacturing, and control for this particular drugs happens. Once this medication is ready to use, we go for the labeling, that how to label those. We always see that whenever the medication has been taken, there is a lot of data which has been entered onto those leaflets, or there is a separate booklet that you will get, that what has been done for this study drug to get into market. So all those comes as an leveling. Then we go for the regulatory approvals for those particular study drug after this, and then the manufacturing starts. Once regulatory approvals are received, the manufacturing happens. That is a core part of business starts from here. This all is a research part, and here it start with the manufacturing, sales, marketing, and safety surveillances. So till regulatory approvals, pharma company only invest, and whatever investment they have done during this particular phase, they take out from all this manufacturing and sales and marketing. Let's go to next slide. What are the stages of clinical trial? So now we are going more into technical now. Earlier we have just seen that how the trials, how you theoretically define those trials, but now we are entering to the more technical aspects of it, that what is protocol, what is approved protocol, what is investigator, how the trials are conducted. So it's always start with anything called as a protocol. What is protocol? So if you wanted to drive somewhere, just let's say an example that you want to drive somewhere, so you always find out. So if you don't know the route, you will find out the route on Google Maps or some any other maps, and you determine when to take left, when to take right, how many kilometers go ahead, is there any hindrance that you are going to face, how much the fuel is required, what type of vehicle can go to such places. So you will do all your research, and you will write down your something for your references in the future to follow for. So the protocol is something same kind of, where everything of clinical trial is been mentioned. Like this is called as a bible for your study, where every aspect of your trial is recorded, and the clinical trial is conducted based on approved protocol only. So once your protocol is approved, that protocol is given to investigators. So that again, it can be given to CROs to identify the investigators, and investigators will be determined based on to their experience. So like if we see that there is a gynecologist and your study is related to pediatrics, so there is no point you are calling a gynecologist. You need to identify such investigators who are expert in that particular therapeutic area where your protocol defines for. So once your investigators are finalized, we always determine their feasibilities, their qualifications, whether that particular facility is having all available resources to conduct the clinical trials or not. And then this particular investigator along with the protocols will be taken to the approval of process, which includes the ICF approvals, or even ethics committee approval. So ethics committee is someone who is having a member of 6 or 7 people, which are few are from investigator. Investigator is someone who will call it as a doctor, but he is investigating our experimental drug. That's why we call him as an investigator. So it's a doctor typically. So principal investigator or sub investigator comes into same category, but those are doctors, because we cannot prescribe any medications. It's a authority of doctors who can only do it. So once this investigator selection is done, the approval process start with the ethics committee. So what ethics committee? Ethics committee is someone who is a group of 6 or 7 people, along with the investigators or doctor. Some lawyers will be there, some laymen will be there to identify. So this particular company who is conducting trials, or the investigator, will explain why you are conducting this trial. You will show them protocol, you will show them study design, and they say that, okay, let's see whether it is safe to use or not. They will understand the preclinical results, and they will give approvals. Okay, fine, because you can continue your trial, because anything which is going to human, it is well controlled. So that's why we need a ethics committee, whether the trials will be conducted into ethical manner or not. Because there are, in history, there are a lot of cases happened, like the study drug where used or are tried onto prisoners. It was tried onto some war prisoners. There are a lot of cases. So this process of clinical trial is highly controlled. So ethics committee is one of them to check whether the trials is conducted into ethical manner or not. So once the approval is done from this approval processes, we will enter to the enrollment and the ICF. ICF stand for informed consent form. Like if we ethics committee, even if we have given a, approvals, we still need to inform what medications that you are giving to the subject. Subject is your patient. So patient can be, if it's a trial is a phase 1, it can be a healthy volunteer. If it's a phase 2 trial or phase 3 trial, it can be a deceased person. But you are explaining them why you are doing this trial, and you need to take a approved signature, the informed consent form, ICF. We need to sign them that you have been treated with this treatment and you are fine to be part of this trial. So that's why informed consent. So we always say that documentation is important part of anything. So this ICF is one of the most important, I would say, most important document during your clinical trial. So how does it go? So once the ICF process starts, then we start collecting the CRF data entry. So what is CRF? It's a case report form. What is case report form? Let's take on a different example. So when you might, everyone is already in colleges or somewhere, that whenever you want to fill any form for any examination, you will provide all your information, that your first name, your last name, your age, your demographics, your qualifications, anything which is related to you. But you are giving some data into some format. It's not like randomly you're writing something. If someone is giving first name and other person is giving only last name, no, you are making it an organized way that you are collecting sufficient and the same kind of data for all. So you are giving some structure to collect that information. So that is in clinical research, we will call that structures as a CRF, case reports form, where the data has been collected into similar manners. The similar forms will be used for all the participant of the studies and will be compared into subsequent usage, but the CRFs will be same for all. So if I'm collecting the first name and last name, I'm not collecting the middle name. So all the subjects, so if it's 100 subjects, I'll collect only first name and last name. If I'm collecting only weight and not height, so I'll collect only weight for all. So to get that consistency, we use the case report forms. Once your forms are ready, then the actual data entry starts. And this data entry has been once all, if your study is having 100 subjects, so you will collect some 10 forms from each of those, so you'll get thousands forms. So all those 1,000 forms are reviewed and validated. What is validation? Validation is something that we are checking whether the data is collected correctly or not. So for an example, if you ask for first name and someone might have entered the second name or their blood group into first name, so that's not correct. You are expecting first name to be reported on first name window which you are providing. If someone have reported their blood group, there is no use. You cannot analyze. So you need to validate whether the collected data or the entered data is correct or not, if it is as per the expectations or not. And the data, once the data is clean, will go for the database lock. This locked database. So prior to that, we have already reviewed and validated the data. This locked database will be sent to the data analysis team, where they use a different softwares like statistical methods to determine the to analyze the data. And this analyzable data, they will use different graphs, table, listings. They will prepare a clinical study report, and they will provide it to the regulatory authorities for their review, that we have conducted clinical trials, these are their outcomes, that the existing treatment is working this way, these are their adverse reactions, earlier treatments are like that, now we have determined different route of this administrations. So all your details of your clinical trial will be present into your CSR document. CSR is a clinical study report, which is your last document which goes for approvals. The final outcome of any clinical trial is a CSR. And once approval is once review for the CSR is done, it will be sent to regulatory approvals. They will review all the trials that you have conducted along with the results, your graphs, listing, interpretations, and the ethical conduct as well will be approved. And approved drug, as in previous say that we have seen, if it is approved, it will come into market. Yeah. Do anyone have any questions? We'll take a questions afterwards. For now, I'll continue my remaining slides. So, overview of clinical trials. As I said, that the first study is designed, and we'll design the documents to collect the information. This once the data documentations are ready, we'll inform to the regulatory authorities that we have completed our initial review of documentation. We have designed one study, and we need approval for the going ahead for the conducting a clinical trial. So we select the investigators. We take approvals from ethics committee that this protocol has been reviewed by ethics committee. The design is been reviewed by ethics committee, and then it will again go for the approval. Next stage, we will go to investigator meeting. Now let's see that you are conducting your trials into multiple sites, like 5 or 10 sites. So every investigator have their different interpretations. Everyone, whenever we are reading a sentence, we are reading a paragraph, everyone can interpret it differently. So the trial should be in a synchronized way. We call all investigators together, and then we will talk to them. We'll have a meeting with them. We'll explain that what we are looking for, and that will synchronize all the investigators understanding for the protocol. Once the investigator meeting is done, this is simultaneous process that happens, like site selections, then patient enrollment. So once investigator meeting is done, we'll go for the patient enrollment. So this investigators are doctor. So patients goes to hospitals, and doctor will explain them that we are conducting a trial if you wanted to be part of it. And then if the patient is fine, then we'll go for the enrollment using the ICF forms that earlier discussed. Then there will be another person who monitors this all processes. So we call that as a clinical research associate who monitors all this process, whether the investigators are working correctly or not, or whether they are working as per expectations, whether they are reporting their adverse reactions, whether they are maintaining their documentation practices or not. So everything will be done. So let's see that your study is having more than 3 visits. So every time when you are going to doctor, he will ask you to come for a follow-up visit. So if you are having only fever and you are well, you will not visit doctor. But if it is something different that you need to visit, ideally you should follow up your physician based on to their advices. That but how to do, when to do a follow up, it will be defined into your protocol, and the follow-up visits will be done. Monitor will be there for monitoring every visits. And here comes the data management, who will review the entered data, who will design the ECRFs, who will review the validation part of database. And then once all validation and review is completed, it will be sent to a statistical review, and final report is prepared, and which will be sent indeed to the regulatory approvals. So who all are involved into clinical trials? Majorly, right now we have all talked about the patients, but along with patients we have talked about the investigators. But before that, someone who are designing these protocols, so that's the pharma industry. So who all are involved? Industry, researchers who will provide you the molecule, then the industry who will fund this particular action, will design the protocol, then the advocate groups, then the funders. If the industry is not funding, then there will be different funders for this organization. Then the approval from the approval bodies like an FDA, which is for USA. For India, it's a DCGI. So if you are conducting a European, that there is a different regulatory bodies. So those all will be part of your stakeholders, along with the pharmaceutical industry who will from R&D groups. So there is important, which is a CRO. We called it as a contract or clinical research organization. So CRO will have a different departments. Different department will have different work structure that they follow. Like in a clinical research manager will look for the documentation practices. Research coordinator will look for the research results which has been obtained, that how to conduct the trials and all. Regulatory affair managers, so they will communicate with the regulatory bodies like an FDA or DCGI for submissions and approvals for your study trials. Then there comes the data managers, medical reviewers. Medical reviewers will review for the safety consultations, safety profiles for the study, and data managers determines the data structures, what all CRFs to be collected, validation part, review part, everything. So CRO are specialized into conducting clinical trials. In some cases, like whenever there is a protocol, it's always a responsibility of the one who is funding, the who is writing the protocol. But all pharmaceutical companies do not have those expertise in dealing with the regulatory approval, regulatory body. So what they do, they will design the protocol and they will hand it over to clinical research organization, and they will ask, do end to end for this trial. So these are specialized organization to conduct end-to-end clinical practices or clinical research studies. So what does mean by clinical end-to-end? So first starts with the selection of sites, investigators, then the data management part of it, then the analysis part of it, monitoring part of it, then submissions to using the regulatory affairs, the medical reviewers, the safety reviewers. A lot of different teams will be involved, and they are specialized into it to conduct the clinical trials. So pharma industry or those giant pharmas are relying on CROs these days to complete their clinical trials, because they are not expertise, they are expertise, and they can conduct clinical trials in an exact and expected manner. So DCGI, as I said, DCGI is a same, it's kind of an FDA for India, Drug Control General of India, who regulates all clinical trials in India. We have ethics committees, we have hospitals, we have aggregated laboratories, doctors. See, you might see that few of the tests might not be happen onto the clinical physician sites. So there are different laboratories which get involved. So external laboratories, there are different types of those, maybe a local labs, there are central labs, a lot of different things will be involved into clinical trials. So this is just a rough idea for who all are involved into clinical researches. What is NDA? NDA is a new drug approval which is required for any trial to be conducted. So in NDA, there are different types. So one is a INDA and the second one is a NDA. So INDA is filed even prior to conducting your phase 1. So once your preclinical or animal studies are done, that's a short term, and then you file an INDA. INDA is an investigational new drug approval form, which has been submitted to FDA, and then we will start with the phase 1 where safety, then phase 2 effectiveness, just a overall idea. Phase 3 is more information on effectiveness and safety with a larger volume, and once phase 3 is completed, we will file the NDA, and this will be reviewed, approval, disapproval. So only approval will go for the next processing for the manufacturing and phase 4 if it is disapproved. So what, we have invested a lot of money here, correct? If it is disapproving, $1 million is going to west. So this is the overall idea that how the approval process happens. However, nowadays pharma companies add additional approval processes after each phase. So you will get approval here. So if it is disapproving, so you will cut short here itself and you will not spend money on these parts. So if it is disapproving here, you will not spend here. And why it is disapproving, you can improve your protocol based on to these findings. So it's not like that once it's disapproved, it will not continue. You need to change your protocol. You need to start a trial from beginning to conduct wherever it has been disapproved or what parameters it been disapproved. But if it is, make sure every FDA will make sure that it's safe and effective. That's most important. New drug application. So it has been given to a critical component of drug approval process, which has been given prior to study drug enters, prior to entering into a phase 1. It's called as an investigational new drug approval form. It's a part of NDA process only, and the goal of NDA is to provide enough information to permit FDA reviewer to reach safety, efficacy, and quality for the pharmaceutical productions. So now that's the new drug approval, INDA, NDA, that you got an idea that how and when the regulatory approvals has been taken. You have now fair idea about what are the phases of clinical research, who all are involved into clinical trials, what are the stakeholders, how to conduct. So you have seen that this phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, always make sure that always we have seen this looks very simple, that there are different phases of clinical trials which happens like phase 1, phase 2, different particular the population increases. But every phase is having their own protocol, and based on protocol the trial will be conducted. So what is clinical data management? Data management involved in all aspects of processing the clinical data, working with range of computer application database systems to support collection, cleaning, and management of subject or trial data. So in short, this is a very theoretical definition of clinical data management, but clinical data management is something that you are designing a clinical database for conducting a clinical trial based on to protocol, and only not database designing along with how the data has been collected, whether that data is having that quality of data, you are doing a review of it, you are validating that particular data, you are validating the database, and everything comes under the data management. Clinical data management plays an essential role into data collection phase of clinical research to ensure that compliance and accuracy. Compliance, as I say, that the protocol is asking something, your ethics committee given you approval based on to your protocol, and whether that compliance is happening or not, whether the data is collected based on to those particular requirement or not, the accuracy is still there or not, that has been determined. Determined where the clinical data manager plays an important role. CDM is a critical process in clinical research, as I said. Why? Because you are the one, the data managers are the one who designs the database to collect the data information. Then which this CDM is leads to high quality and reliable and statistically sound data for clinical trials. As I said, that if the blood group is collected into first name section, there is no point in analyzing that comparison. That's an example. So data manager plays important role for collecting the reliable data, which is statistically sound and can be analyzed. So it is an integral part of clinical research, and everything revolves around the CDM for clinical trials. Is a center where everyone consults, everyone collaborates for conducting a trial, because your data has been collected by the CDM, which has been monitored, which has been maintained, which has been designed by a clinical data manager. So what CDM collects, it's a data collection, it's a data integration and data validation. So what do you mean by data integration? So data integration is something related to that you might have seen some parts of the data are auto-populated, or some parts been integrated. So if there are two different databases, so you when you have collected designed for collecting a data information, and this is another system where you are collecting, whenever the subject is coming into site, you are punching in his thumb impressions that this subject has come into site. But your clinical database is different, and this the subject visiting to site just on a punching information for his is present to different database. So the different database is can be clubbed together into a clinical database, and that is termed as a data integration. So that will avoid a multiple collections or duplicate data to be clubbed or to be collected from the sites, from the subjects. What are the objectives for CDM? Data collection, data integration, system and data validation. So what are the method, what are the types of data collection? So there are paper, electronic or remote data capture. What do you mean by paper? So earlier in previous it's like in a earlier world, when we used to submit a examination form, we used to write it on paper. So the same kind of CRFs were into a paper format, and those term as a paper CRFs. Right now we are moving ahead with a digital world where electronics items are used to collect the data. So those are electronic CRFs. Remote data capture is something that someone is sitting on this location and he is giving some information in electronic format to someone sitting into third world. So that's a remote data capture. What are data integrations? Data received from all sources of single database and ensures consistency and correctness. So as I said, that there are different databases which are involved into clinical trials. Those will be integrated together. So that's the data integration. System and data validation is a system validation done via UAT QC. What is UAT? It's a user acceptance testing. So if you are designing in a database, you will always go for the testing of that, whether that is collecting information as expected or not. This is a very vast topic. When we go ahead for the details, we'll discuss this in details. The QC is a quality control and programming of data validation via edit checks, programs and manuals. So these are quite technical terms where you will be involved into testing of database, you will do a quality control, you will do a programming of a data validation. The programmer will be different, but you are doing a validation whether the you as a life sciences background might not know the languages being used for developing the clinical database, like a C sharp or any R or any other tools, but you will be involved into validation of that particular database which has been designed. Edit checks is something, if we know that weight should be collected into numeric format only, and if someone is entering their weight into alphabetical format, so it will pop up something. It will not allow, the system should not allow to enter the alphabetical numbers do in that particular field, because that's expected the numeric. So that kind of simple edit checks that been designed into database, which has been given by the data managers, will be validated by data managers. However, the programming is done by the programmer. So as I said, that DM is in a central for everyone, which has been communicated from site or investigators, monitors or CRAs, study teams like a client, the CTLs, then data acquisition teams, the safety parameters, then coders, programmers. So this will play a key role, because you see that programmer will cannot directly go to client teams, because he will tell in his technical perspectives, and they are not technical. So data manager is someone who will understand the technical, and he will explain in their language that what the programmer is expecting. The same way, coder is also an integral part of coder. It's someone who is using a coding dictionaries to code any particular adverse event or medical conditions or any pharmaceutical products which has been used into studies. They code into some formats which will be used across globe, which will be same for all. So for an example, if we have a fever, in some regions we called it as fever, in some regions we call it as pyrrhia, in some regions we will call it as a elevated temperature only, or in the local languages, many countries will have their own local languages, so they will term it as differently. But someone who is analyzing, he might be sitting in US and he don't understand the local languages, so there should be something which is across uniform across the globes. That work will done by the coders, as a data manager is a interface for everyone, for all communications. So approach for clinical data managers is a manual data cleaning. Then data cleaning is, as I said, that data should be collected as per the requirement or not. Then reactive issue management. So whenever there is something wrong has been entered into database, so the data manager will react to those issues by raising a queries, and will say, this is not as per expected, could you please change the data, or if you cannot change, just justify why you have entered this. So there will be provisions to provide the comments that why you have entered this way, and if it's justifiable, the answer is sufficient to accept the data entry, then we'll close the issues. So that's the review approach. Then site centric patient data, as I said that clinical data management, there is a vast phase 1 phase 2 trials where we will specifically monitor those sites, that how they are collecting the data. So it's a site centric patient data. That's for the traditional approach. And when it's a modernized approach for clinical data management, so it is so we have invented with the automized centralized monitoring system, where earlier CRAs used to go into sites every frequently, like every 10 days CRA has to visit the hospital to understand whether the trials are conducted into ethical ways, the documentation practices are following up, protocol practices are following up or not. But nowadays we are into digital world where the site visits, the monitoring visits are happening remotely. So we have entered to the automated centralized monitoring platforms, where even FDA has given the approvals for those. And frequent visits to sites is a very costly approach, and this is cutting down the cost of study drug research as well. Risk-based quality management, again the same. If you see that 10 sites are involved into your study, and you see that only 2 sites are not following the trend, 2 sites are not following the as expected, as they are supposed to, so other 8 sites are following the as explained. So you will concentrate more on two sites, and you will give less time or less efforts to 8 sites, because you understood that 8 sites are already doing well with their understanding of protocol or the requirements. So we'll concentrate more. That is called as a risk based quality monitoring approach. It's a risk based, because 2 sites are a risk because they are not following the protocol requirements. And then was data forms, new sources, every data is a paper format earlier, so now everything is into digital. So for clinical trial, one trial can go to lakhs and lakhs forms, so it's difficult to maintain those paper CRF. So and to analyze those particular, it's a tedious job. one man cannot do it. But when it comes for the digital format, everything can be organized into cloud locations, single source of documentation, single storage system. So everything clubs together can be a modernized approach to conduct the clinical trials. As I said earlier, we have seen who are all involved into clinical research, but now particularly we'll talk about who are all involved into clinical data management. So it's a clinical data manager who will be like in the termed as a lead data manager, who is having a vast experience of conducting clinical trials or conducting data management practices. And to support him, we'll have a different clinical data coordinators who this clinical data manager will instruct them how to clean the data, what all activities that has to be performed during. So these are less experienced, however need a good skill set to become a clinical data coordinator. Then there comes a database programmer. So this database programmer is someone who collaborate with a clinical data manager to design your clinical database. And there is a validation lead. A clinical data manager or clinical CDC can also be a validation lead who will validate the program database which has been programmed by the programmer. There are other stakeholders also involved into this, but these are very important to know for now. So what is data progression? So data management is an integral part who will be involved into data quality, identifying data quality. Excuse me. Yeah, so data management will play important role into data quality, data integrity, data security, and data privacy. Privacy is very important because you cannot compromise the data privacy, which has been regulatory requirement. The patient data is very private. Even a personal data is private, so cannot be shared to anyone. So whether the data privacy is maintained, that also been checked by the data management team. So type of clinical data management systems. So as I said, there are paper-based trials and the electronic data capturing system. So paper-based trials, it is entered into CDMS from the CRF. So the same way, just taken a previous example where you have a paper to enter the data, and then those will be transcribed, those will be typed into different systems, those will be collected differently, those will be shipped, those will be couriered to one location. So those are like paper-based systems, very time-consuming and expensive, and the DCF sent in paper forms to site. So what is DCF? Is a data clarification form. So once the CRF data entry is completed and you see that there is an error, so how the CRF have reached to your location, so how you will ask site to change the data which is present at your place, and site have already sent it to you. So that communication goes through DCF, that is a data clarification form, which is again a paper format. DCF, we need to write the error, what the error is into CRF, and you will send it to, they will send it back to you with their answer, the clarifications, and based on to their answers you will understand why they have entered this and how to interpret this data. But that's old practices which happened onto paper base, where when there was no digitalization. But now we follow the electronic data capturing system where the data is directly uploaded into CDF systems by the investigators. So investigators means the doctors, so it can be done by doctors or the delegates, we call it as a clinical research coordinators, who will help investigators to enter those data. Because you know that investigators are very busy persons, so to get an appointment it take times. So they will have their sub investigators or the coordinator to help them to enter the data, but it is indeed the responsibility of investigator. They are time saving, inexpensive, because you are reducing the courier charges, the DCF charges. This is a real time data that you are seeing, and electronic alert sends to site if there is any problem, because there is no need of because the data is in electronic format. So whenever you are entering any query, it can directly seen by the site at the same time. So it is real time as well. So those are differences between paper based and electronic data capturing systems. Right now in the real world, there are still paper based trials which are ongoing. But why they are ongoing? Because they have been started like 10 years ago, and to shift those paper based trials into electronic format is a tedious job. It's a time taking, money taking. So they are continuing with the paper based trials until they finishes off. But all new trials which has been happening are electronic data capturing systems only. So what are any examples? Are electronic data capturing system like in a very commonly used as an Rave EDC, Rave IMA data EDC, then VUI EDC, then Oracle EDC. There are a lot of based on to costing effectivity, based on the understanding of your CRO, what they want to choose, or your client or the pharmaceutical industry, what they want to choose will be different. There are different service providers for the electronic data capturing system. So this is how your case report form looks like. Just have a look what is this collecting. I'll explain what it is. So we are collecting a participant number, study group, study health. So this is a typical case report form looks like. So this is in a printout or the digital format of your case report form. This can be printed and collected the information or can be submitted into electronic system directly. This is how your see, this is not a well-designed CRF where date of visit is just a blank. So the site can enter into any format like DDMM YYYYY, DDMM YY, YYY MMDDD. So any format can be used. So as I said that it should be collected uniform. So that's why this is called as a well-designed CRF where you are giving them information that what kind of information you should enter. So date, anyone can enter anything. So they can only provide the 16th of April. What is the year? We need year. We cannot assume it is 2022 or 2021. It should be well entered. So we are giving them a format to enter along with the guidance that how should enter. The same blood pressure. So we are giving them 2-digit or 3-digit to be entered. So if it is 70, so they should write 070, not like 70 and 180. So that again, it will not be uniform if you are not giving the guidance. So this is the example of well-designed CRF. Same way. So how you are collecting the blood information, height, weight, earlier slides as well. So same as earlier slide. What is Reddit check specification and data validation specifications? As I said that when you are entering a numeric value is expected to be entered onto that particular field and the alphabetical value is entered. So that comes under the edit check or the validation. So how do you define those? Well, data validation is the process of testing the validity of data accordance with the protocol specifications. And edit check programs are written to identify the discrepancies in entered data, which are embedded into database to ensure the data validity. So edit check is something like if you are getting one pop-up or any error message saying that you are expected to enter this. So for an example, if you are expected to enter the year into 4 letters, 4 numerical letters, but they have entered only 2. So whenever you are entering 2 and you are shifting to next field, the system will give you an error message that you are expected to write into 4 digits and you have entered only 2. So what message that you are giving, that can be personalized, that can be formatted as per your requirement, but that's how the edit checks and the system validation work. These edit checks programs are initially tested with dummy data containing the discrepancies. So as I said that we will do a UAT of database. So this is called as a dummy data entry. UAT is a user acceptance testings where expert will review this particular CRF and programs whether it is collecting as per the expected or not. Discrepancy may be due to inconsistent data, missing data, range checks, or deviation from the protocol. So these are very technical terms. Once we go into details, we'll understand what are the range checks, what are the deviations, what are the missing data points, and all those. And these discrepancies will be resolved always by the investigator after logging into the system. So what is discrepancy? Is an error, and who will be resolving is the investigator. So investigator is the doctor who is doing. He can do it by himself. He can delegate it into someone else. Let's go to next slide. So study conduct. So as I said that clinical trials are always So there are different phases of clinical trials. So clinical study conduct, setup, conduct, and closeout. So earlier setup is your, we have discussed setup, that you are making study database ready to use. So that comes under your study setup. So once the database is ready to use, we will send it to our approvals, we'll send it to our investigator, we'll give them training that this is the database that we have designed as per the protocol. We'll ask them to collect the data in this format, how the follow-up visits will fall, how to create the follow-up visit, how the dynamics will work. Everything is a part of your setup. And then once the database is ready to use, it will be moved to a study conduct phase, where the database is used for the entering the data. So it is a activated database, it's called that. And then the data entry starts. Once the data entry starts, there will be errors, and that will be called as under discrepancies, and those need to be managed. So this discrepancy management is again a part of your clinical data management, one of the most important part, because you know that not everyone is trained to collect the data in the same manner, and people are tend to do errors. So discrepancy is a part of usual practice that has been managed by the data management team. There are different teams involved into conduct as a safety data reconciliations. We called it as a SAE reconciliations. So SAEs are a serious adverse reactions. So we do, and this is a safety data base, which has been different database, which collects the different safety related parameters, because you know safety is one of the most important criteria for all phases of clinical trials. So there is a different safety database which needs to be reconciled with the actual EDC database, and that called as safety reconciliations. There are different requirements of coding, which is part of a conduct. And as I said, that a adverse events or the medications needs to be coded, and which is done by a coding team. That's the query generations. And then once these all our queries or discrepancies are resolved, that's an ongoing process that happens into conduct phase. And then apart from the system edit checks or the queries or the reconciliation, we also check the manually, so whether the data is collected correctly or not. So that is the manual checks or the quality control for this practices during the trials, which is a part of your conduct. So next, once the conduct is done, and your data is collected completely, we'll move to the closeout phase. And once what is happening into closeout phase, so you are closing all your discrepancies. There should not be any open queries, there should not be any errors into database. If there are errors, those should be justifiable errors. Safety reconciliations, like the both systems are reconciled. Reconciliation is a comparison, just a definition. The textbook definition is a comparison for two different databases, and those should be identical to each other. That's why it is called reconciliation. So all terms should be coded, all queries generated should be closed, all resolution updates to database has to be completed prior to going for closeout. Then all manual checks has to be completed. CRF, if there's been shipped to some other location, should be completed. And once everything is completed, then the database is locked or freeze. So freeze is something that data cannot be changed, and lock is hard locking, that nothing can be changed. So freeze can be unfrozen without any approvals, unfrozen without any approvals. But lock is something which, if the data, if some errors are present into database and you need to unlock, so you cannot do it directly. You need a regulatory approval for unlocking the data. But freeze is can be done at site. Anyone can do it who has having approval authority to do so. Once your closeout is done, the data is ready for analysis and reporting. And how it goes, the database is released for the review for the statistical team. We will extract the data from database, and then statistical team will review their different aspect of that data using the table listing graphs. They use the stats techniques, they use the R techniques to understand, to interpret, to how the data is shown to the approvals. And once that is done, we'll do a e-publishing. Then this is published to e-publishing is something where the data is hyperlinked. So for an example, if you are giving a reference to table 1.1 from this particular figure or this one, so whenever there is any table link, so those will be hyperlinked, and the data will be taken you to that particular once you click to those. So that is part of your republishing. And then once those published figure tables will be added into your CSR document, and this CSR will go to the submissions. So let's have a overlook again for uh, your all setup activities, conduct activities, and close out in just a quick manner. That's in CRF, in study setup. You are designing your CRF, you are developing whether it is a paper-based or eCRF. You are building a database for collecting, and you are testing as well along with the validation. And there will be edit checks, preparation, and testing for the database happens. That's a part of your setup. Once the database setup is completed, it will be taken to the conduct, and in conduct you will do you as a data manager, you will review the data entry process. However, in during a conduct phase, data is entered by the sites is your hospitals or any investigator locations where the trials are conducted. Then there comes a discrepancy management, then data coding, which has been using medra and whodini. Medra is a medical dictionary for adverse reactions coding, which is used by a coders, and whodini is a who drug dictionary, which is used for coding medications only. So whodini is only related to drugs, and medra is related to adverse event or medical reactions. Then you comes for the data review and which is an ongoing process, or the process for the data manager who is doing a QC for that particular SA reconciliation and database. So SA reconciliation, as I said, is a safety database differently that you are reconciling, and data transfers. So data transfers, if your study is using the labs, those results will be transferred to this particular locations and will be entered. So that comes as a typical part of your conduct. Once your study is completed with the conduct, it goes for the closeout, where you will review if the essay reconciliations, all essays are completed. You will review the quality, you will log the database, will go for the electronic archivals, and then data transfers to the analysis team. What is discrepancy management? You might have seen this word very frequently. That is the process that systematically addresses discrepancies generated within the study. Discrepancies are typically errors which has been comes under the discrepancy management. So for an example, if you are asked to enter the height of subject, and site missed to collect the height. So as a data manager, you will raise a query, or you will ask site to enter the height for subject, but they have missed to collect the height. So it is expected, but not collected. So you are managing how to handle this situation. So that's the discrepancy management. So once you are asking site to enter, they respond back the weight height is not collected. So you are accepting that it is not completed. So you will give them option whether to enter unknown, or you will collect it into next visit. So that's a management, that how you are managing your discrepancies. So that's a query resolution part. So discrepancy management is your query resolution, and discrepancy management includes review, as I said, that review of discrepancies, investigation of the reasons, and resolving them. Understood? As I said, it's a most critical activity into CDM process, because it's a very vast. Every data point has to be checked whether it is as per expected or not. There are cross-linked forms, there are cross-linked fields. For an example, if the if the gender on demographic form is selected as female, then the pregnancy form has to be populated. So, and the data has to be collected on pregnancy form, whether the female is capable of pregnancy, whether it is that particular form is applicable. If it is above 60-70, it might not be applicable. If it is into their 2030s, might be applicable. So that's again part of your discrepancy management. Whether if the data is not reported on a pregnancy form, you will raise a queries that the gender is selected as female, and the age is also less than 60, and we are expecting pregnancy form which is blank. So that's kind of a queries will be raised. That's a part of discrepancy management, and CDM team review all discrepancies at regular intervals to ensure that all have been resolved or not. So the integrity of data is maintained. What is database locking? As I said, that all the activities has been reviewed for completions, and to see whether the data is ready for locking. All the pre-locking check, there will be a different pre-locking checklist you need to follow, whether based on that checklist, so that you will not miss on to any parameters, because the study has been conducted for years and years, and you don't know what has been happened into first year of study and what is happening into fourth or fifth year of study. So there will be a particular checklist. So there will be uniformity, there will be a regulatory check on those particular parameters, whether this is completed during lock or not. So you will follow the same standard operating procedure for based on to your organization. So all CROs have their own SOPs to follow for locking. What is data quality and data cleaning? your data quality is again the same way that data manager reviews the discrepancies, closes as per the requirement, whether data is collected is into as per the expected manner or not, the data entered into ECRF, the data is designing happened or not correctly, the validation is correct or not, data collection is correct or not, then data mapping where different databases are mapped with each other. SA reconciliations are two different portfolios or two different databases that you are reconciling. Everything is your conduct part of conduct setup, and then data locking whether all these activities as conducted as per the checklist or not, SOPs are followed or not. So if the SOPs are followed, the standard operating procedures are followed, the quality of data cleaning is at its utmost. That's the highest that you can get it for.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Just go back to the facts. Yeah. What is data mapping?
See, as I said that if the pregnancy is there, if the gender is reported as female, we are expecting that only pregnancy form should populate. Pregnancy short form should be applicable if the gender is female and the female is less than 60 years. So that particular data has to be mapped with each other. So there will be different codes written in order to populate only pregnancy form if this condition of female genders female and age before 60 is reported. So
I mean to say all this, there will be a data mapping means, I mean, all these things will be written or planned something like.
Data mapping is a general term that you can say that the different CRFs are mapped with each other. So for an example, your study is expected to have a 8 particular visits, so 8 times you need to visit after every month. So the
Okay.
mapping is like first visit is happening on 1st of Jan, so second is happening on 1st of Feb, third is happening 1st of March. So this is a mapping of your visit, so that is a visit
That
mapping.
is something they are pre-planning it. They are mapping
Yes,
everything
so
before the study
yeah,
is going to be started.
so
Okay. Okay.
you are designing your database based on your
Okay.
protocol requirement, and that's the visit mapping. So
Okay.
your database always control document, so you are defining, you are designing as per the protocol, and that's the data mapping.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Okay, so we are very close to understand the all responsibility of CDM study setup, where the data manager is responsible for CRF designing, development, database build and testing. Testing is a UAT part of it. Then edit check preparation and testing during study conduct, data entry that you need to monitor whether it is as per the expectations or not, discrepancy management, data coding. Coding team is also part of data management. You have a data review, which is an ongoing part which happens on a day-to-day basis, which has been done by a clinical data manager. SA reconciliation is a safety, different databases will be reconciled. Data transfer into study closeouts, so data transfers are different labs data will be transferred to some locations, then quality control of this database, and then database locking. Electronic archival is something like this. Lock data will be saved on some safe manner in electronic archival formats, which can be retrieved afterwards, but should be safe for longer durations as well, based on to regulatory requirement that how many years this data should be collected. And then the data transfer, so data transfer is transferring this data into CSR, transferring this data to regulatory approvals, that you are saying that you have completed your trial, but what are the proofs? So you can send them the data transfers that you have collected the data in this manner, and this is the proof what I am interpreting from this.
Okay, sir. Can you just tell me how the data is archived? Electron. Any example? And in what mode?
So for an example, so your database is a digital format, so you are
Okay.
collecting 100 forms. So 100 forms is approximately 1 MB data. So 1 MB data will be archived into different formats. So it can be into your pen drives, it can be into your cloud storages, it can be into different hard disks, a mega hard disk. So anything can be used based on to your client. So it will be archived. So archival is a storage in a safe manner, which can be retrieved as well afterwards as required. Any more questions?
No, sir. That's it. Thank you.
So this is my last slide for today's presentation. That's we are the path for your clinical research industry, and we will be providing you highest quality of clinical research and healthcare education at VCRI.
Thank you, Ganesh, for a wonderful
Thank you, sir. Much
presentation.
appreciated.
The session is open for the question round. If you have any queries, we are open and we are available to answer your queries.
Yeah, it was I mean, most of the things were covered. Just I want to know what actually will be in the classes. Is this an overview
This is
or the
just
classes will be?
this is just an overview. So when we go for the actual classes, you will understand each and every term, how to do that, why you are doing it, and how to complete that with accuracy. As a
Mean to
day
say,
to
you will
day,
be teaching how to design a CRF and
yes.
and how we are going to this edit checks and how we are going
Yes,
to
why
do
you
coding.
starting from why you are needing a edit checks and how you design it, how you validate those, and how it will be used into conduct of clinical trials. Everything. So we will be sharing you. If you might have already been got their curriculum for this course, or we will be sharing with this curriculum to you that what we are covering, and it will be like an end-to-end clinical data management that you will be learned. So you will be
Mean
ready.
we'll be actually entering the data into the database and we'll be trained how to
See,
do edit checks,
being
all
a
those things.
being a data manager, it is not expected from you to enter the data. Your part is design the database to understand how the entry is happening and all. So we will teach you how to do that, how to design a database, and why you are designing it that way. And if someone is entering data, what you need to do as a data manager. So data entry is done typically by the sites. Sites are the investigator sites or the hospitals, but they don't know what to collect. They will collect based on to their requirement, but our protocol is asking our requirement, so we will give them, you should collect in this manner. So we are giving them the instruction that you should collect this.
Interesting. So what is the duration of this course, sir?
It's 2 months, Uma.
It's 2 months. So
Yeah.
it will be like alternate days or daily, sir?
No, Monday to Friday. Monday to Friday.
Monday to Friday online, right, sir?
Yeah,
Or
yeah,
timing,
yeah.
sir?
Yeah, we'll maybe 8 p.m. in the evening.
Evening, 8 p.m., 8 to 9?
Yeah, yeah. 8 to 9, 9:15.
Okay. So, as I said earlier, I do have some experience in this clinical data management. I explained everything to you, sir. I'm
Yeah,
now, 43 and I have 7 years experience and I took a long gap. So if I get this
definitely.
certification, will I get a
Will
break again?
I'll discuss with you personally those scenarios. Definitely,
Okay.
I will give a call after this meeting. We'll give you a call.
Oh, is it, sir? How about the
Obviously,
placement, sir?
Yeah, based on the requirement of the company. Like, see, as of now, we got few openings from Novo Nordisk. We are referring our students.
Okay.
Previously to some other IQV also we referred. Based on requirement of the company, we are referring our students. Yeah, it's happening.
Okay.
It's a continuous process.
Okay, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any more queries?
hi, sir.
Hi, Saiti. Yeah, please tell me.
Yeah. How about job market in USA about CDM?
Job marketing. Can you rephrase what exactly it is?
Means in CDM, will you do marketing and all?
No, placement in US, no, because we have the students from USA too. In
Okay.
all the batches we have, they are getting trained with us, but we are
Okay.
not showing any placement over there. Some
Okay.
references, we have some trainers from other countries too. Sometimes we connect them, but we are not doing any placement in US.
Okay.
But many of the students they are getting trained who are from
Okay.
USA. They are getting trained.
Wait, can you repeat the last thing that you just said? You don't do placement in the US?
Can you please come again? Edna? I didn't get it.
The last thing that you just said, what did you just say about you don't do the placement in the US? Is that what I heard?
No, somebody, Saiti was asking about placements in USA. Now, we train for US students or who are aspirants from USA. We are saying that, no, we are not doing any placement support in USA, but we have some trainers who are from USA. We are just connecting them. If they're able to refer 1-2 references they were giving, it's exactly the scenario. In India, yeah, we are referring.
Yeah,
We're
it's
referring
just
to
that we are the India-based company, so we have good influence in India and good this thing. In US, we train many candidates. In every batch, we will have at least 3 to 4 candidates from USA, those who are NRI and even US residents. And in terms of placement assistance there, we have some limitations. This is how he is trying to tell you. And we have 1 or 2 consultancies to those who also provide their candidates to train, and they also help sometime placement. But as we are based in India, we are not promising any support in US, but if something comes in, we definitely support without any hesitation on that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Any more?
yeah. Hello? Hello?
Yeah.
And you said the hours or the timing is it 8 to 9 IST?
Yeah, in 8 to 9 IST, Indian
Okay.
Standard Time.
Okay.
So this
And
certification, sir,
one more question.
it's one more. Okay, sorry.
One more question. Yeah, the resume prep part of it, did you guys help US students
Yeah.
with the resume prep?
No, we'll help you in resume preparation and all. No, we will
Okay.
will support you.
All right.
Sir, is this certification is globally recognized?
Yeah. We ourselves is an individual company, one way. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. And once again, wanted to say you people, once if you go to interview, basically once they arrange an interview, they don't ask about anything what you other than basic qualification. They'll start discussing about introduce yourself, then you'll say something about you, and the next question may be what makes you to come for this interview. Then obviously the answer, I have a passion towards this. Passion towards what? CDM. Then what is CDM? The interview goes like that. It's not like question and answer. If I'm not wrong, Ganesh?
Yeah, that's true, sir. It's always the interactive, and based
Yeah.
on to your answer, interviewer will pick your words to question you more.
Yeah. And once again, it's not like we got gold medal or something. It's about how you are able to uh, completely you are this much years of experience and complete study you are putting in, you are keeping in two papers. Okay. Completely your education, your experience in 2 pieces of papers, you are just giving it to them and you just introducing yourself. Okay, what exactly the interactive session is happening, that fetch you a job. That's what exactly. If you say I have passion towards CDM, why? The next question is why. And the last question is, why should I take you? What are your strengths? Strengths, always people will say something, but what about your weakness? These are all, people think that interview is beyond. Interview is just interaction. It's not interrogation, it's just interaction. So definitely we will give as much as information. Trust on yourself, but we will provide you complete subject and we'll make you ready for any sort of interview. We'll make you ready for any sort of interview. You can trust us in that part. Okay.
quick question.
Yeah.
Is
So
it
as
gonna
I
be
told you,
yeah?
yeah.
Yeah.
Is it gonna be like a project and assignment as we go?
Assignments will be given. Assignments will be given. Like the work will be given. Definitely. And we have our own forum. There you need to post the assignment. It is an interactive forum. Always, whatever you want to comment or you want to post something, you can do it over there. We have our own forum. Once the admission is done, definitely we'll include you into that forum. Definitely, sir also will be there. So he'll look into that.
All right.
So, sir, we'll be getting access to the database and we'll be doing all this discrepancy and essay.
Liber Clinica will, Liber Clinica database access will give.
Sorry, I didn't get you, sir. What's that?
Liber Clinica database
So
access.
as I said that
Yeah.
there are different databases, like I
Yeah.
named this as IMED at Rave, Oracle Clinical,
Okay.
Inform.
Yeah.
So Liber Clinica is one of them. So you will get.
Yeah, we will give that one.
One more quick question. Which one is the most popular? Is it an Oracle database? Which one is the most popular?
Industry is
system?
moving from Oracle to Rave and Rave to Viva. So
Yeah.
most abundant is Rave nowadays.
And
So
moving
is that
again
what
towards
you're gonna
Viva.
use?
Yep.
Is that
Moving
the one
towards-
you guys are gonna use?
No, this is different one that we'll be using for you. But see, it's a database that how it looks, how to navigate it on those, but the designing part, how to build those, why you're using those, that's where you will be get more trend on. So database navigations is a part where see, it's not necessary that Reeve has been used for every industry and every client. So there are different databases. So it's important that what you are doing, why you are doing, and when you should do it. The navigations can be learned anytime once you know why you're doing it.
Okay.
So one more question is, how is the market now? I mean, are there many opportunities in CDM?
To be honest, it's very much because you know that right now this due to corona every industry is hampered, but this CDM and pharma is one of leading industry during this time as well.
Okay, so I'm now 43. Will I get a chance to get in once again?
Of
with
course,
the
why not?
certification?
You need the skills to prove yourself.
Okay.
Yeah, it's all like Kuma. I said no. The last question, why should I take you? That time you need to be in a position to give an answer.
Okay.
That's what exactly.
So you will provide some sort of assistance in placement also, no, sir?
We'll provide interview. We'll try based on requirement of the company. We'll provide interview. In interview, nothing. We are not doing anything. It's completely depends
Yes,
upon
I
yourself.
understand.
Yeah.
I understand. So is that something limited numbers you send or something like that, or until we get you'll support
No,
us?
nothing. It's like it's not limited. We will support all our students whenever opening comes. We'll inform to the maximum. Who got job for them will say maybe if they got job they may not require the reference again. The people who are not getting job we keep updating them based on whatever the vacancies we are getting.
Mhm.
Yeah, we'll do that part. Okay. Any more queries? Any more queries from the people? Pratiksha, Meena, Chitalio, Avandi, Niola.
So
Any queries?
this short-term course is better or long-term, that 7 months course about clinical research and all fully course is there, right? 7 months.
Normally, when you are going with CDM, it is open only for CDM. When you go to 7 months course, like there we have pharmacovigilance, regulatory affairs, and as well as the data analysis by SAS, clinical SAS, like base advanced, SDTM, ADAM, TLS. That time, you can go to multiple openings. When there is a SAS opening, you can go. When there is a CDM opening, we can. And when there is a PV opening, we can. Like that.
So how job opportunities on CDM in US?
Nice, sir. Is it because it's an indication that many people are getting trained with us from USA. Many people. We doesn't have any batch without USA people till now. It's
Okay.
happening even for SAS. Our SAS batch, even which is going on now, we have around 4 people from USA.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, it's happening. It's happening, sir.
Oh, what are the job types of job roles in CDM? From entry level,
Come again, come again.
what type of job roles we can apply for is in CDM?
No, no. It has its own titles based on, see, clinical data manager, clinical data analyst, clinical data associate.
So
Each company have their own.
yeah, every organization will have their own titling or the job titles they provide. So based on to experience, it can be a senior clinical data manager. If it's a more experience, it can be a principal clinical data manager. In some organization, it is termed as a lead data manager, data management lead. So based on to your experience, every organization will have different hierarchy of designations.
Okay.
And last month we got like clinical data associate 1, clinical data associate 2. Normally there was nothing like that earlier. Associate, then analyst, something it was. Now we got an opening clinical data associate. Normally it is SAS programmer 1, SAS programmer 2. But this time we got from a company associate 1, associate 2. It varies
Okay.
from company to organization
Okay.
to organization. Yeah.
What is this certification is name, sir? Name of the certification?
Certification in clinical research and data management.
Okay.
Okay. Any more queries? And we do have the session from 22nd onwards, that is at 8 p.m. Okay, you all will receive the information. Okay, we started and we started the enrollment procedure. Hope you all will receive that one. Okay, and thank you, Ganesh. Thank you for your valuable time and very good information. Thanks a
Yeah.
lot here.
Yeah. Thank you everyone for your participations. Do come back to us for any queries and we'll happy to assist you.
Thank you, Ganesh.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much.
Thanks
Thank
to
you.
all for joining.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
We'll connect you.